exploring the life of Alexander the Great, the man, the myth, the legend. Alexander the Great, the legendary conqueror of ancient times, was known for his heroic deeds on the battlefield, his strategic brilliance, and his larger-than-life personality. But beyond the historical facts of his life, there are countless myths and legends that have surrounded Alexander for centuries. From tales of his divine parentage to stories of his close relationship with his favorite horse, Bucephalus, Alexander's life is a rich tapestry of fact and fiction that continues to captivate us to this day. So, join me as we explore the fascinating myths and legends that surround the life of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was born in Pella, the ancient capital of Macedonia, in July 356 BC. He was the son of King Philip II of Macedon and his fourth wife, Olympias, who was the daughter of the king of Epirus. His father, King Philip II, was an accomplished military leader who had brought much of Greece under his control. As a child, Alexander was educated by the philosopher Aristotle, who taught him a wide range of subjects, including literature, philosophy, and politics. Alexander's mother, Olympias, was a powerful figure in Macedon and had a strong influence on her son's upbringing. She instilled in him a sense of his own importance and greatness, and she encouraged him to believe that he was a descendant of the gods. Olympias was a princess from Epirus, a region in northwestern Greece. She married Philip II of Macedon in 357 BC, and Alexander was born a year later. Olympias was said to be deeply religious and superstitious, and she instilled these beliefs in her son. She also had a reputation for being fierce and manipulative, and she was known to use her influence to further her own interests. As a child, Alexander was raised in a strict and disciplined environment. His education was overseen by a philosopher named Aristotle, who taught him a wide range of subjects, including history, science, and philosophy. Alexander was said to have been a quick learner and a voracious reader, and he was known for his intellectual curiosity. Despite his close relationship with Aristotle, Alexander was deeply attached to his mother, and he was said to have inherited her fiery temperament. Olympias was fiercely protective of her son, and she was known to be a formidable adversary to anyone who crossed her or her family. She was also deeply devoted to the ancient Greek religion and was said to have encouraged Alexander's belief that he was the son of Zeus. Olympias had a significant influence on Alexander's upbringing and education, and she played a role in shaping his worldview and military strategies. She is said to have taught him about the heroic legends of Greek mythology and to have instilled in him a sense of destiny and greatness. Alexander's relationship with his father was complex. On one hand, he respected his father and was heavily influenced by him. Philip II was a successful military leader who conquered much of Greece and transformed Macedon into a powerful kingdom. Alexander grew up watching his father's military campaigns and was trained in the art of warfare from a young age. He admired his father's strength, intelligence, and leadership skills. On the other hand, there were tensions and disagreements between the two. Olympias, Alexander's mother, and Philip had a tumultuous marriage, and this may have contributed to Alexander's strained relationship with his father. Additionally, when Alexander was a teenager, Philip remarried and had a son, which may have made Alexander feel insecure about his position as heir to the throne. Some sources suggest that Alexander and Philip had arguments and disagreements, particularly regarding Alexander's desire for more autonomy and control. While the two were close, there were tensions between them, and Alexander was said to have resented his father's philandering and his preference for his younger son, Aridaeus. However, Alexander was deeply influenced by his father's military successes, and he was determined to follow in his footsteps and expand the Macedonian Empire. One story about Alexander's relationship with his father involves a horse named Bucephalus. According to legend, the horse was offered to Philip II for an exorbitant price, but he deemed it unmanageable and refused to purchase it. None of the king's horse trainers were able to mount it. Young Alexander, who was watching from the sidelines, asked if he could try to ride the horse. Philip and his attendants laughed at the suggestion, but Alexander was insistent. Eventually, Philip allowed him to try, thinking it would teach the boy a lesson. Undeterred, Alexander studied the horse's behavior and noticed that it was frightened by its own shadow. He then turned the horse's head to face the sun, so that its shadow disappeared, and was able to mount it and ride it around the ring to the amazement of the crowd. Philip II was so impressed by his son's bravery and skill that he declared, "O my son, look thee out a kingdom equal to and worthy of thyself, for Macedonia is too little for thee." This event is said to have marked the beginning of Alexander's journey to become a great conqueror and leader. This display of bravery and intelligence earned Alexander the admiration and respect of his father and his courtiers and foreshadowed the many daring feats he would undertake as a military leader. Bucephalus became Alexander's trusted companion and carried him into many battles, including the famous Battle of Gaugamela. According to legend, Bucephalus was a black stallion with a white star on his forehead and fierce temperament. The exact breed of Bucephalus is not known, as the concept of breeds did not exist in ancient times. However, he is believed to have been a high-quality horse with a strong and muscular build, possibly a Thessalian or a Nishan breed. He loved the horse so much that he even named a city after the horse, called Bucephala, in modern-day Pakistan. When Bucephalus died from battle injuries, Alexander is said to have mourned his death and founded this city in his honor. Alexander the Great had a deep connection with horses, which were an essential part of his life and military campaigns. In addition to Bucephalus, he had many other horses, including several war horses that he rode in battle. He was known to treat his horses with great care and affection, and he often went to great lengths to ensure their well-being. For example, during his campaigns, he would personally inspect their hooves and make sure that they were fed and watered properly. In addition to his love for horses, Alexander was also a skilled equestrian. He was known for his ability to ride horses in battle and to maneuver them through difficult terrain. He believed that a good horseman was also a good soldier, and he often used his horses to outflank and surprise his enemies. Alexander's connection with horses was an important part of his personality and legacy, and it has contributed to the many legends and stories that surround his life. In 340 BC, at the age of 16, Alexander was appointed regent of Macedon while his father was away on a military campaign. During his time as regent, Alexander proved to be a capable leader, suppressing rebellions and maintaining order in the kingdom. Alexander showed his leadership abilities by putting down a rebellion in Thrace. The Thracians launched an attack on Macedonia. Alexander quickly raised an army and marched to face the Thracians. The battle took place near the town of Mount Haemus, and it was a hard-fought and bloody affair. Alexander showed remarkable bravery and skill in leading his troops, and his leadership proved crucial in securing victory for the Macedonian forces. After the battle, Alexander was praised for his courage and leadership, and it helped to cement his position as a respected military commander. The victory also helped to demonstrate the strength and power of Macedon under Alexander's leadership, which would become an important factor in his later conquests. In 336 BC, Alexander's father, King Philip II of Macedon, was assassinated at his daughter's wedding banquet. Alexander, who was just 20 years old at the time, was named King of Macedon and assumed the throne. Alexander's ascent to the throne was not without challenges, as there were several factions within Macedon who opposed him. However, he quickly consolidated his power by executing those who had plotted against him and winning the loyalty of the Macedonian army. Once he had secured his position as king, Alexander set his sights on expanding the Macedonian Empire. He began by quelling uprisings in the north and subduing rebellious Greek city-states, such as Thebes. Alexander then began his conquests, starting with a campaign against the city-state of Thebes, which had rebelled against Macedonian rule. He quickly defeated the Thebans and razed their city to the ground as a warning to other potential rebels. Alexander then turned his attention to Greece and set out to unite the various Greek city-states under his rule. He defeated the combined forces of Athens and Thebes at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC, effectively ending Greek resistance to Macedonian rule. With Greece under his control, Alexander turned his attention to the east and, in 334 BC, he launched his famous campaign to conquer the Persian Empire. He crossed the Hellespont with an army of around 35,000 soldiers. His first major battle was at the Granicus River, where he defeated a Persian army that was much larger than his own. On the other side of the Granicus River, a Persian army was waiting to confront Alexander's forces. The Persian army was much larger than Alexander's army, with around 40,000 soldiers, and was led by the satraps, governors, of various provinces of the Persian Empire. Alexander knew that he needed to win the battle in order to establish a foothold in Asia Minor, and he ordered his soldiers to charge across the river and attack the Persian army. The battle was fierce and bloody, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. Alexander personally led his troops into battle, and he was almost killed when he was struck in the head by a Persian battle-axe, attacked by a Persian nobleman named Mithridates. However, Alexander was able to fend off the attack and kill Mithridates, demonstrating his bravery and skill in combat. In the end, Alexander's superior tactics and leadership prevailed, and his army was able to defeat the Persian forces. The victory at the Battle of Granicus River established Alexander as a formidable military leader and gave him the momentum he needed to continue his conquests in Asia Minor. After his victory at the Battle of Granicus River, Alexander marched his army through Asia Minor, conquering cities along the way. These conquests included Ephesus, Miletus, and Halicarnassus, among others. Ephesus was a wealthy city on the coast of Asia Minor that was known for its impressive Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Alexander's army captured the city without much resistance, and he spared the temple, which was a major center of worship in the region. Miletus was another important city in the region, located on the coast of the Aegean Sea. Alexander's army laid siege to the city for several months, and they eventually captured it by breaching the walls. The city was known for its intellectual and cultural achievements, and Alexander spared the lives of many of its inhabitants, including the philosopher Anaximander. Halicarnassus was the site of one of Alexander's most difficult battles in Asia Minor. The city was defended by a Persian garrison, and it took Alexander's army several months to breach the walls and capture the city. One of the defenders was the famous Persian commander Memnon, who had been advising the Persian king on how to defeat Alexander's army. Memnon of Rhodes was a Greek mercenary commander who fought on the side of the Persians during the conquest of the Persian Empire. He was born in Rhodes in the late 4th century BC and was known for his military prowess and strategic genius. When Alexander invaded Asia Minor in 334 BC, Memnon was appointed as a military advisor to the Persian king, Darius III. Memnon understood the strengths and weaknesses of the Macedonian army, and he advised the Persians to adopt a strategy of avoiding direct confrontation with Alexander's army and instead using guerrilla tactics to wear them down. Memnon's strategy was initially successful, and he was able to slow Alexander's advance through Asia Minor. He led the defense of the city of Halicarnassus and was able to repel Alexander's first attack. However, Alexander eventually captured the city after a long siege. After the fall of Halicarnassus, Memnon continued to advise the Persian king on strategy. He proposed a scorched earth policy, which involved destroying crops, burning towns, and laying waste on the land in order to deprive Alexander's army of supplies. This strategy was also effective, but it was not fully implemented due to disagreements among the Persian commanders. Memnon died in 333 BC, before the Battle of Issus, and his death was a significant loss for the Persian side. Despite his early successes, the Persians were eventually defeated by Alexander's army, and their empire was conquered. Nonetheless, Memnon's military tactics and strategic genius are still studied and admired today. In 333 BC, Alexander faced his greatest challenge yet when he confronted the Persian king Darius III at the Battle of Issus. The battle took place near the town of Issus in modern-day Turkey and was one of the most significant battles of Alexander's conquest of the Persian Empire. Darius III had a massive army, estimated to be around 100,000 soldiers, and he was confident that he could defeat Alexander's smaller army. However, Alexander had a highly trained army and was a skilled military commander. The battle began with a charge by the Persian cavalry, which was met by Alexander's own cavalry. The two sides clashed, and the battle quickly turned into a chaotic melee. Alexander personally led his cavalry charge, and he was able to break through the Persian lines and engage in hand-to-hand combat with Darius III. Despite the Persian king's efforts, Alexander's army was able to gain the upper hand in the battle. They were able to push the Persians back and surround their army, trapping them against the Mediterranean Sea. Darius III fled the battlefield, abandoning his army, and Alexander was able to claim victory. He fled to the east, leaving behind his family and treasure. Alexander pursued him and eventually caught up with him in 330 BC in the city of Bactra, located in modern-day Afghanistan. Darius III was hoping to rally support and form a new army to confront Alexander once again. However, before he could do so, he was betrayed by one of his own generals, Bessus, who declared himself the new king of Persia and had Darius III arrested. Bessus had hoped to use Darius III as a bargaining chip in his negotiations with Alexander. However, Alexander was determined to eliminate any potential threat to his rule and ordered his army to pursue Bessus and rescue Darius III. Bessus was eventually captured and executed for his treachery, and Darius III was murdered shortly thereafter by one of his own guards, who hoped to win favor with Alexander. Darius III's death marked the end of the Achaemenid Persian Empire and the beginning of Alexander's rule over the region. The battle was a significant turning point in Alexander's campaign, as it allowed him to continue his march into the heart of the Persian Empire and establish himself as a powerful conqueror. A legend says that, at the Battle of Issus, Alexander famously rode his horse, Bucephalus, directly into the heart of the Persian army, where he fought bravely and fearlessly. This act was seen as a symbol of his daring and audacity in battle, and it helped to inspire his troops and strike fear into the hearts of his enemies. The move was also a strategic one, as it allowed Alexander to disrupt the Persian lines and create chaos and confusion among their ranks. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Alexander and his army emerged victorious in the battle, thanks in large part to his bravery and tactical skill. The Battle of Issus was also notable for its impact on art and culture. One of the most famous depictions of the battle is the Alexander mosaic, which was discovered in Pompeii and shows Alexander charging toward Darius III on his horse. The mosaic is considered one of the finest examples of ancient Greek art and is now housed in the National Archaeological Museum in Naples, Italy. After his victory at the Battle of Issus, Alexander continued his march into the heart of the Persian Empire. He captured several key cities, including Damascus and Tyre, and eventually reached the city of Babylon in 331 BC. In Babylon, Alexander declared himself the rightful king of the Persian Empire and began to adopt Persian customs and dress. He also began to incorporate Persian soldiers and administrators into his own army and government, hoping to create a united empire that combined Greek and Persian cultures. However, not everyone in Alexander's army was pleased with his adoption of Persian customs. Some of his Macedonian soldiers saw it as a betrayal of their own culture, and they began to grumble about Alexander's leadership. In response, Alexander ordered a mass marriage ceremony, in which his soldiers married Persian women, in an attempt to foster greater understanding and unity between the two cultures. When Alexander arrived in Egypt in 332 BC, the country was ruled by the Persian Empire. However, the Egyptians were unhappy with Persian rule and saw Alexander as a liberator who would free them from their oppressors. Upon his arrival, Alexander was welcomed by the Egyptian people, and he was crowned as the Pharaoh of Egypt. He founded the city of Alexandria on the Mediterranean coast, which became a significant center of commerce and learning. One of the most significant events of Alexander's time in Egypt was his visit to the Oracle of Amun at the oasis of Siwa. Alexander's visit to the Oracle of Amun was a significant event in his life and contributed to his sense of divine mission. The oracle was located in the oasis of Siwa, deep in the Libyan desert, and was considered one of the most sacred sites in ancient Egypt. According to ancient sources, Alexander made the journey to the oasis in 331 BC, seeking guidance and confirmation of his divine mission. The journey was difficult and dangerous, as the desert was known for its harsh conditions and banditry. When Alexander arrived at the oasis, he was greeted by the high priest of the Temple of Amun. The priest confirmed Alexander's divine status, proclaiming him the son of Zeus and the legitimate ruler of the Persian Empire. Alexander was deeply affected by the oracle's pronouncement and saw it as a sign of divine approval. He subsequently adopted the title of son of Zeus and used it to legitimize his rule over the vast territories he conquered. Alexander's visit to the Oracle of Amun is significant because it solidified his status as a divine figure and helped to justify his conquests in the eyes of his followers. It also contributed to the spread of Greek culture and ideas throughout the eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East. In 330 BC, Alexander marched into the heart of the Persian Empire once again, this time to capture the city of Persepolis. The city was the center of Persian wealth and culture, and Alexander's army looted and destroyed many of its treasures. This act has been criticized by some historians as an unnecessary act of destruction, but it also demonstrated Alexander's power and the extent of his conquests. Alexander's march into the heart of the Persian Empire was a significant moment in world history. It marked the expansion of Greek culture and the spread of Hellenism across Asia and into Egypt. It also marked the decline of the Persian Empire and the beginning of a new era of Greek dominance in the ancient world. Alexander the Great was a complex and multifaceted figure, and his portrait and personality have been the subject of much debate and analysis over the centuries. In terms of his physical appearance, Alexander was said to be of average height and build, with fair skin, curly hair, and a distinctive knotted hairstyle. He was known for his piercing gaze and intense charisma, which helped to inspire and motivate his troops on the battlefield. In terms of his personality, Alexander was known for his ambition, intelligence, and strategic vision. He was a masterful military tactician and was able to inspire his troops to achieve remarkable victories against much larger and more established empires. At the same time, Alexander was also known for his impulsiveness and his tendency to take risks, sometimes to the point of recklessness. He was known to indulge in excessive drinking and partying, and his personal relationships were often tumultuous and fraught with drama. Alexander also had a tumultuous personal life, with several marriages and romantic relationships that were marked by intrigue and betrayal. His relationships with his other wives and mistresses were similarly complex and often ended in acrimony. One of Alexander's most famous relationships was with his first wife, Roxana, whom he married in 327 BC. Roxana was a Bactrian princess, and she accompanied Alexander on his campaigns in India. Despite their marriage, however, Alexander continued to have numerous affairs and liaisons with other women throughout his life. One of Alexander's most famous mistresses was Barsine, the daughter of the Persian king Darius III. Alexander met Barsine after his conquest of Persia, and the two had a son together, whom Alexander named Heracles. Although Barsine was one of Alexander's most prominent mistresses, she was not the only woman he had affairs with, and his love life was often marked by intense jealousy, betrayal, and drama. Similarly, Alexander was said to have been deeply hurt and betrayed when he learned that one of his closest friends had an affair with his favorite mistress, Campeasp. In addition to Barsine, Alexander had relationships with several other women throughout his life, including Thalestris, the queen of the Amazons, and Statiritu, the daughter of Darius III, whom Alexander married after his conquest of Persia. Statiritu had been taken captive by Alexander during his conquest of the Persian Empire, and he had married her in a gesture of political goodwill. Roxana was his primary wife, and she likely felt threatened by the presence of Statiritu in the royal court. There were rumors that Roxana had been involved in a plot to have Statiritu killed, although these rumors have not been definitively proven. Despite the tensions between Roxana and Statiritu, Alexander reportedly treated both women with respect and kindness. He also had 2 children with Roxana, both of whom were born after his death. There are several stories and legends surrounding Alexander the Great and his supposed relationship with an Amazonian princess. According to these tales, Alexander encountered a group of Amazonian warriors during his conquests, and he was particularly taken with their queen or princess. One version of the story claims that the Amazonian princess fell in love with Alexander and wanted to marry him. However, Alexander declined, as he believed it would not be acceptable for him to marry a foreign princess and potentially weaken his rule. Another version of the story suggests that Alexander and the Amazonian queen engaged in a brief affair, but it ultimately ended due to cultural differences and the logistical difficulties of maintaining a long-distance relationship. It is worth noting that these stories are not historically verified and are likely myths or legends. The Amazonian warrior culture did exist in ancient times, but there is little evidence to suggest that Alexander the Great had any significant interactions with them. Another one of Alexander's notable relationships was with his close friend and companion, Hephaestion. His relationship with Hephaestion was one of the most significant and enduring relationships of his life. Hephaestion was a nobleman from Macedonia who was the same age as Alexander, and the two men grew up together and became close friends and companions. Their relationship was one of deep mutual respect, affection, and loyalty, and they were said to have been inseparable throughout their lives. They fought side by side in battle, shared many adventures and experiences, and were often described as 2 bodies with 1 soul. There has been much speculation about the nature of Alexander and Hephaestion's relationship, with some historians and scholars suggesting that they may have been lovers. However, there is no concrete evidence to support this claim, and most scholars agree that their relationship was one of deep platonic love and devotion. Alexander and Hephaestion were close friends and companions for many years. They had met as young boys in Macedon and had grown up together, serving in the same military units and fighting side by side in many battles. As Alexander's conquests expanded, Hephaestion remained by his side, serving as one of his most trusted advisors and closest confidants. They shared many adventures together, including their famous journey to the Oracle of Amun in Siwa, Egypt, where Alexander was proclaimed as the son of Zeus. Hephaestion was also a key figure in Alexander's inner circle, and he played an important role in the administration and governance of the empire. He was appointed as one of the generals in charge of Alexander's army and was tasked with overseeing the construction of many of the empire's most important cities and fortifications. However, their friendship remained strong throughout their lives, and when Hephaestion died, Alexander was said to have been inconsolable. He reportedly ordered that the physician who had been treating Hephaestion be executed and that the goddess Clepias, who was associated with healing, be banned from the city of Babylon where Hephaestion had died. According to ancient sources, Hephaestion fell ill with a fever while in Ecbatana, a city in Persia, and his condition rapidly deteriorated. Despite Alexander's best efforts to save him, Hephaestion died a few days later. The exact cause of his death is unknown, but it is believed to have been caused by an illness or infection. Alexander was said to have been devastated by Hephaestion's death, and he ordered that the entire city of Ecbatana go into mourning for him. He also organized a lavish funeral procession for Hephaestion, which included a massive pyre, elaborate funeral games, and a public mourning period that lasted for several days. In the wake of Hephaestion's death, Alexander's behavior became increasingly erratic and unpredictable, and some historians believe that his grief may have contributed to his decline in health and eventual death. Despite this, the memory of Hephaestion continued to be a source of inspiration and motivation for Alexander, and he is said to have spoken of him often in the years that followed. There are many stories of wild parties and debauchery that took place in Alexander's court. He was known to indulge in heavy drinking and revelry, and he surrounded himself with a retinue of courtesans and entertainers. One famous story recounts how, during a night of heavy drinking, Alexander challenged one of his friends, Clitus, to a contest of bravery. When Clitus criticized Alexander's decision to adopt Persian customs and dress, Alexander flew into a rage and killed him with a spear. This incident is often cited as an example of Alexander's impulsiveness and his tendency to act without considering the consequences of his actions. Despite these excesses, however, Alexander was also known for his deep intellectual curiosity and his passion for learning. He surrounded himself with philosophers and scholars, and he was committed to spreading Greek culture and knowledge throughout the known world. In this sense, Alexander's legacy is a complex and multifaceted one, and it reflects both his flaws and his many achievements. Another famous story that illustrates Alexander's reputation for wild parties and excess is the famous banquet held in the city of Persepolis in 330 BC. According to historical accounts, Alexander and his army had just conquered the city and were celebrating their victory with a lavish feast. During the course of the banquet, Alexander reportedly became increasingly intoxicated and began to act erratically. He ordered his soldiers to bring forth the sacred fire from the Persian royal palace, which was considered a highly sacrilegious act by the Persians. He then proceeded to set fire to the palace and ordered his soldiers to join him in a wild dance around the flames. While the exact details of the event are the subject of some debate, it is clear that the banquet at Persepolis was a highly charged and controversial moment in Alexander's career. Some historians view the event as a symbol of Alexander's arrogance and disregard for the customs and traditions of the people he had conquered, while others see it as a symbolic gesture of triumph over his enemies. Whatever the true significance of the event may have been, it is clear that the banquet at Persepolis is a powerful example of the wild and unpredictable nature of Alexander's reign, and it continues to be the subject of fascination and debate among historians and scholars to this day. After Alexander's conquest of Persia, he continued his campaign to expand his empire eastward, ultimately leading his army into the Indian subcontinent. In 327 BC, Alexander and his army crossed the Hindu Kush mountain range and entered the northern region of the Indian subcontinent. There, he faced several Indian kings and their armies, including the powerful King Porus of the Punjab region. Alexander's army was able to defeat Porus' army in the Battle of the Hydaspes, which was fought on the banks of the Hydaspes River, modern-day Jhelum River, in 326 BC. However, despite this victory, Alexander's troops became increasingly restless and homesick, and they were reluctant to continue their march into the heart of India. Alexander's campaign into India was significant because it helped to spread Greek culture and ideas into the Indian subcontinent, which would have a lasting impact on the region's history. It also marked the limits of Alexander's empire-building ambitions, as his troops became increasingly unwilling to continue their conquests beyond India. On the way back, he faced many challenges, including harsh weather conditions and several battles with local tribes. The harsh weather conditions of the region, including extreme heat and monsoon rains, took a toll on the troops, and they suffered from diseases such as dysentery and malaria. Additionally, Alexander's army encountered several local tribes and kingdoms that were hostile to their presence. The most notable of these was the Malayan tribe, which controlled a large region along the Indus River. In a battle with the Malayans, Alexander was severely injured, and he narrowly escaped with his life. The battle took place near the town of Multan, where the Malayans had constructed a defensive wall along the bank of the Chenab River. Alexander led the charge against the Malayans and attempted to scale the wall. However, he was hit by a large arrow, which pierced his lung and caused him to fall from the wall. The wound was so severe that many of his troops thought he had been killed. Despite his injury, Alexander managed to recover and rally his troops to victory. The Macedonians were able to breach the wall and defeat the Malayans, although the battle was costly and many of Alexander's troops were killed or injured. After the battle, Alexander's health continued to deteriorate, and he suffered from a fever that lasted for several days. In 324 BCE, he finally returned from his campaign to Babylon, after being away for 3 years. He was planning to continue his conquests and expand his empire, but his plans were cut short by his sudden death in Babylon in June of that year. Alexander the Great fell ill in Babylon in June 323 BC, after participating in a series of banquets and drinking sessions. The exact cause of his illness is not known, but it is believed to have been a result of a fever, possibly aggravated by alcohol consumption. After several days of suffering, Alexander died on June 10, 323 BC, just a month before his 33rd birthday. The circumstances of his death have been the subject of much speculation and debate over the centuries, with some historians suggesting that he may have been poisoned, although there is no conclusive evidence to support this theory. After Alexander's death, Roxana and her son faced many challenges as they tried to maintain their position in the aftermath of Alexander's empire. Eventually, Roxana and her son were murdered by one of Alexander's former generals, ending their brief and tragic reign. After Alexander's death, his empire was divided among his generals, who became known as the Diadochi. The most prominent of these generals were Ptolemy, Seleucus, Antigonus, and Cassander. They fought amongst themselves for control of Alexander's vast empire, and their struggles continued for several decades. Ptolemy seized control of Egypt and founded the Ptolemaic dynasty, which lasted for several centuries and produced some of the most famous figures in ancient history, including Cleopatra. Seleucus founded the Seleucid dynasty, which controlled much of the eastern part of Alexander's empire, including Mesopotamia, Persia, and Bactria. Antigonus and his son Demetrius formed the Antigonid dynasty and ruled over Macedonia and Greece. Cassander established the short-lived Antipatrid dynasty in Greece. The Hellenistic period, which followed Alexander's death, saw the spread of Greek culture and ideas throughout the Mediterranean world and beyond. The influence of Alexander's legacy can still be felt today, in everything from literature and philosophy to architecture and art. There are many myths and legends surrounding Alexander the Great's military campaigns. Here are a few examples. 1. The Gordian Knot. According to legend, Alexander encountered a knot tied by Gordius, the king of Phrygia. The knot was said to be impossible to untie, and it was prophesied that whoever could untie it would become the ruler of all of Asia. Alexander, frustrated by his inability to untie the knot, famously cut it with his sword, declaring that it did not matter how it was undone. 2. The Battle of Issus. During this battle, Alexander was said to have come face to face with the Persian king, Darius III. According to legend, Darius offered Alexander a large sum of money and half of his empire if he would agree to a peace treaty. Alexander replied that he would only accept surrender, and that he would not rest until he had conquered all of Persia. 3. The Siege of Tyre. According to legend, Alexander was unable to conquer the city of Tyre due to its location on an island off the coast. Undeterred, he ordered his troops to build a causeway across the sea to the city. The causeway was built using the ruins of the city of Old Tyre, and it took 7 months to complete. Once the causeway was finished, Alexander was able to successfully capture the city. 4. The Oracle of Siwa. Before his conquest of Egypt, Alexander visited the Oracle of Siwa in the western desert. The oracle was said to have proclaimed that Alexander was the son of the god Zeus, and that he was destined to become the ruler of the world. This declaration further cemented Alexander's belief in his divine destiny. 5. The crossing of the Indus. During his campaign in India, Alexander and his army faced the daunting task of crossing the Indus River, which was wide and fast-flowing. According to legend, Alexander used a group of swimming elephants to help guide his soldiers across the treacherous waters, ultimately succeeding in his mission. 6. The Curse of King Midas. Legend has it that Alexander encountered the tomb of King Midas during his campaigns, and foolishly opened it. As a result, he was cursed with a mysterious illness that plagued him for the rest of his life. His military genius and strategic brilliance, combined with his charisma and larger-than-life personality, have inspired countless tales of heroism, adventure, and conquest. But as we've seen, Alexander's life was not without its darker aspects, including his tumultuous personal relationships and his ruthless tactics on the battlefield. Despite his flaws and controversies, however, Alexander's impact on history cannot be overstated. His conquests brought together diverse cultures and civilizations, creating a lasting legacy of Hellenistic culture and spreading the influence of Greek philosophy, art, and learning throughout the ancient world. We hope you enjoyed this journey through Alexander's life and legacy, and invite you to continue exploring the fascinating stories of history with us. Thank you for watching. And, if you liked this video, hit the subscribe button, for more videos like this. See you at the next one.